Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
Let's turn the world inside out. It's just a beginning.
We have achieved remarkable things. We can be more, we can be much more.
Science is clever, but great creativity is more magical. And now we need that magic.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Take a moment, take a breath.
I'm a believer. The science is clear. We have to get off of oil. We owe it to our children and grandchildren. I'm a believer. We can't just drill our way out. We can't just bomb our way out. We're gonna invent our way out, working together. We need to think big, we need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
The city of the future calls on you to see it through. Will you dream with me? Will you dream with me? Will you build with me? Will you build with me?
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
I'm a believer.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have 3 billion new minds coming online. To do that which we must do. To do that which we must do.
We need to think big, we need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle, imagine the future. Remember the past.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test. Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
Let's turn the world inside out. It's just a beginning.
We have achieved remarkable things. We can be more, we can be much more.
Science is clever, but great creativity is more magical. And now we need that magic.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Take a moment, take a breath.
believer. The science is clear. We have to get off of oil. We owe it to our children and grandchildren. I'm a believer. We can't just drill our way out. We can't just bomb our way out. We're gonna invent our way out. Working together. We need to think big. We need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
The city of the future calls on you to see it through. Will you dream with me? Will you dream with me? Will you build with me? Will you build with me?
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
I'm a believer.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have 3 billion new minds coming online to do that which we must do, to do that which we must do.
We need to think big. We need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle, imagine the future. Remember the past.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test. Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
Let's turn the world inside out. It's just a beginning.
We have achieved remarkable things. We can be more, we can be much more.
Science is clever, but great creativity is more magical. And now we need that magic.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Take a moment, take a breath.
I'm a believer. The science is clear. We have to get off of oil. We owe it to our children and grandchildren. I'm a believer. We can't just drill our way out. We can't just bomb our way out. We're gonna invent our way out. Working together. We need to think big. We need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
The city of the future calls on you to see it through. Will you dream with me? Will you dream with me? Will you build with me? Will you build with me?
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
I'm a believer.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have 3 billion new minds coming online to do that which we must do, to do that which we must do.
We need to think big, we need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle, imagine the future. Remember the past.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test. Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
Let's turn the world inside out. It's just a beginning.
We have achieved remarkable things. We can be more, we can be much more.
Science is clever, but great creativity is more magical. And now we need that magic.
The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Take a moment, take a breath.
I'm a believer. The science is clear. We have to get off of oil. We owe it to our children and grandchildren. I'm a believer. We can't just drill our way out. We can't just bomb our way out. We're gonna invent our way out. Working together. We need to think big, we need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
The city of the future calls on you to see it through. Will you dream with me? Will you dream with me? Will you build with me? Will you build with me?
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
I'm a believer.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have 3 billion new minds coming online to do that which we must do, to do that which we must do.
We need to think big, we need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle, imagine the future. Remember the past.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test. wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
Let's turn the world inside out. It's just a beginning.
We have achieved remarkable things. We can be more, we can be much more.
Science is clever, but great creativity is more magical. And now we need that magic.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Take a moment, take a breath.
I'm a believer. The science is clear. We have to get off of oil. We owe it to our children and grandchildren. I'm a believer. We can't just drill our way out. We can't just bomb our way out. We're gonna invent our way out. Working together. We need to think big. We need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
The city of the future calls on you to see it through. Will you dream with me? Will you dream with me? Will you build with me? Will you build with me?
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
I'm a believer.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have 3 billion new minds coming online to do that which we must do. To do that which we must do.
We need to think big. We need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test. Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
Let's turn the world inside out. It's just a beginning.
We have achieved remarkable things. We can be more, we can be much more.
Science is clever, but great creativity is more magical. And now we need that magic.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Take a moment, take a breath.
I'm a believer. The science is clear. We have to get off of oil. We owe it to our children and grandchildren. I'm a believer. We can't
and
just
a very
drill our way
warm
out.
evening, all of you. I'm Deepak Ramola, and I'm your host this evening. And I believe that when you learn, you become a star. But when you teach, you become a constellation. And I thank you all and congratulate you all. Well, let's start with a huge round of applause. I thank you and congratulate you all for joining us and becoming part of our constellation this evening. We have a beautiful, action-packed show lined up for you. But before that, a couple of announcements. We'll begin with safety measures. At the very outset, I must assure you that on behalf of NCPA, all necessary safety precautionary measures have been taken, and in case of any unlikely incident, except heartbreaks, you can relax and safely enjoy the evening's proceedings. The Tata Theatre, well, this is where my dream of being a flight attendant comes into place. The Tata Theatre has got a total of 6 entry and exit doors, all on the top. Emergency exit on the left and the right hand side. Also, this theatre is adequately equipped with all necessary firefighting equipment. In case you didn't bring your alarm, I'm happy to tell you, we have a fire extinguisher, hydrant, smoke detector, sprinkler, etc. at various points, including the stage auditorium and the foyers. In case of emergency, the security team, ushers, technical officers, program officers will be guiding you to evacuate the theatre, except the ones who are panicking. We've got to focus on the people who are cooperating. So do not panic. Have patience. All security persons and officials at NCPA have made sure the safety drill is in place and all of you are secured for a wonderful show. I would also like to thank our sponsors and partners who've made this evening possible. The TEDx Gateway Breaking Barriers Salon is presented by the Aditya Birla Group and All Out. Don't forget to check out their exclusive zones outside the auditorium. There are some fun stuff that you can engage with. We also have the beautiful partnership of First Post, NCPA, Genesis, BCW, The Better India, Beam, Suntory. The other partners include Green Snack Co., Sleepy Owl Coffee, Eatalish, Style Tracker, Alkaline Premium Enhanced Water. And here are a few rules to remember. Doors, once closed, will not be opened during a session. If you exit the theatre during a session, you will have to deposit your badge with a security guard and will not be allowed back in until the next session. No flash photography or recording. Don't worry, the talks are going to be online. Please do not stand in the aisle. No food is allowed inside the theatre. Please sit only in your assigned seats. Avoid walking in front of the cameras and please put your mobile phones on silent. We live in the digital age, and it would be quite a pity to not tell you about the social media handles. The hashtag is TEDx Gateway Salon. If you tag yourself, take a photo, take a selfie, don't forget to tag us, we love that. We would love to trend with you. The hashtag is TEDx Gateway Salon, and the best ones, we can repost that. It's quite cool to be reposted through the TEDx Gateway handle, so make sure you do that. But before we begin the show, let me tell you, this is not my first time on this dot. In fact, it's a homecoming. I've been a 2-time TEDx Gateway speaker. The first time I was here, I shared the story of my journey with my organization, Project Fuel. Since the age of 17, I document human wisdom and design life lessons of people into interactive and performance-based educational, art, and media-based curriculums. But when I was told about the theme tonight, breaking barriers, my first point of introduction to that concept was immediately rooted back to my mother. My mother, you see, was pulled out of school in class 5 by her grandmother, who was very dramatic and did not want any daughter of the house to study with boys or study at all. My mother growing up would tell me, study so that you have resources, opportunities. And I wouldn't believe her. My mother, if you meet her, is one of the most intellectual and smart and humorous people. My dad has a tough time catching up with that. But I got to believe through my mother's story that she was learning simply by living. And that means everyone who was living was learning something. And that's where the foundation of my organization, Project Fuel, came into place. And ever since, I have been on a mission to document life lessons, spend time with marginalized communities, rural landscapes, urban audiences, and understand what are people really learning. Last year, I had the fortune and the privilege to travel to Tanzania and document the wisdom of women. I met all the way from a woman who had been Miss Tanzania in the 2000s to a rural Maasai woman in the Monduli village of Arusha. I sat across both. But with the woman in Arusha, when I asked her at the beginning of my interaction and conversation, what is the biggest challenge of your life? She looked at me and she said, none. Now let me set context. She lives in one of the driest regions of Tanzania. The Maasais are known to have the wealth of their cattle. So they own nearly 120 cows, 300 goats, and there is no water. So I asked her again, what's the biggest challenge of your life? She thinks back again and she says, I want my children to do well. All right, the day goes by, we eat together, and towards the second half of the afternoon, I see her looking at the clouds that are passing by and smiling. So I inquire, you look happy looking at the clouds. And she said, monsoon is my favorite season of the year. That's the only time I can rest in the afternoons. So I asked, why is that? And she says, oh, why? Because I walk 9 hours every day to get water for this house. 9 hours every day. As my jaw dropped, I asked her, isn't that hard? And she said, no, not just that. When I go to get water, all the cattle come with me. When I come back, I have to share my portion of water as the woman of the house with the young calves and goats who cannot travel 9 hours every day. Hearing that, I asked her, what's her life lesson? And she says, life has taught me, learn to be tolerant and gratitude will follow. I think that is powerful. She said, I can wake up every morning and think, this is 2019. We need more accessibility. But if I'm going to think about it every day, who's going to get the water? So I go about getting the water. The virtue of that woman was tolerance. The virtue of Miss Tanzania was sincerity. And of all the women I have met in my life, I see a thread running through them. And that is, they all stand up for a virtue. The next speaker, when I met her for the first time, I asked her, what is the virtue you stand up for? And immediately she said, honesty. Honesty in life and in art. And I asked her, why is that important? She said, since the age of 8, when she started to learn the classical dance of Bharatanatyam, she knew that the energy exchange is very important. And when she stands on a stage, her audience gets to see exactly who she is. Vidya Subramaniam is a renowned classical dancer known to combine the discipline of space and time in her performances. She believes in exquisite control, yet total immersion in her performances. I think the New York Times says it's best when they say her portrayal of the love between Radha and Krishna has the eternal glow of heartfelt emotion. She's also the rich grace of adavus and striking sense of aesthetics in her dance performances. Vidya Subramaniam, ever since I have spent time with her, I know for sure, is an epitome of grace, art, beauty, and most of all, what she likes to be known for, honesty. Will you put your hands together for the first speaker and performer, Vidya Subramaniam.
my father Drupada. I am a powerful princess. But today, I am being violated in open court. Do you see it? Do you? Why the silence? Is Lord dead in this land? They say love is a gamble. They weren't lying. Of dice and men, which is the greater vice? All of them looked on awkwardly as Duryodhana flashed his heavy thigh and the Shasana pulled the pallu of my sari. No fists, no bows, no arrows, they stood like statues as he unspooled me. In panic and prayer, I uttered Govind's name and he arrived in swaths of fabric. What does it matter what I wear? They would lust after this body anyway. That was the last time I decided to rely on any man for protection or love. Hate was all duty after that day. I was the prize, after all, that Arjun had won, and all I had to shield me were flames. Flames to light fires with. Sakis, let's make it a let your hair down kind of night. I'll start. I am Draupadi. I've heard the whispers, all this talk at the well of me being possessed by five bows, 5 arrows, 5 warriors with 5 hearts beating under 5 breastplates. I often wonder, what would happen if I lost one of them? Would I be a widow? And wed at the same time? They hated me for this predicament, for learning the curves of one body and then moving on to another, year after year after year. 5 kinds of love. It's in bed that they're most vulnerable, don't you think? Yet, all I wanted was to be loved, to be possessed, to be united with one. Instead, my fate was to serve 5. I was the prize after all. Some prize. prize his mother said to share equally with all 5. And for this, they cast me looks of disdain. May you be the mother of 100 sons, they say. But do they ever say, may you be the wife of 5? Huh? Furthermore, why is my love tainted? What do I mean, you ask? Remember Karna? His ego got insulted because I questioned his lineage during my Swayamvaram, and for that, he called me a slut in open court. Why? Because I'm married to 5? But that wasn't even my choice. I was just a prize. A prize. And all I had to shield me were flames to light fires with. Flames to light fires with. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness.
छोड़ो मेहंदी खड़ग संभालो खुद ही अपना चीर बचा लो द्यूत बिछाए बैठे शकुनी मस्तक सब बिक जाएंगे.
You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt.
सुनो द्रौपदी शस्त्र उठा लो अब गोविंद आएंगे. सुनो द्रौपदी शस्त्र उठा लो अब गोविंद आएंगे. कैसी रक्षा मान रही हो दुशासन दरबारों से स्वयं जो लज्जाहीन बड़े हैं वे क्या लाज बचाएंगे.
But still, like air I'll rise. Still like dust I'll rise. Just like moons and like suns with the certainty of tides. Just like hopes springing high.
सुनो द्रौपदी शस्त्र उठा लो अब गोविंद आएंगे. केवल अंधा राजा अब दूंगा बहरा ही है. ओंठ सीधिए जलदा किए कानों पर बहरा भी है.
Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I am the black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling. I bear in the tide.
तुम ही कहो ये यश तुम्हारे तुम ही कहो ये यश तुम्हारे किसको क्या समझाएंगे. सुनो द्रौपदी शस्त्र उठा लो अब गोविंद आएंगे.
If the Pandavas are the 5 senses, Draupadi is our 6th sense. Not seeking confirmation in a mirror nor a light that burns alone. Draupadi is a flame nourished by a million voices, raised in chant and outcry. Draupadi was saved by Krishna in court then. लेकिन अब गोविंद न आएंगे. Does today's Draupadi even need a Govind? Misogyny, inequality, suppression, shaming, violence. We are all responsible. Can we find the power within? Can we find the Draupadi within each of us? Can we find the true voice of equality, of support, and of respect? Rise, Sakhis. Rise, my sisters. Rise against the problematic disrespect of women everywhere. A problem that simply won't go away. Therefore, still I rise.
So poetic and powerful. I think that deserves a huge round of applause again, everybody. Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You know, Vidya, ever since I saw that performance, I see you as a beautiful combination of the art and the artist. And I am just provoked to ask you, do you think from that standpoint in the world today, we need more artists? Or do we need more artists that exist to create more art?
Well, art does not exist without artists, and artists do not exist without art. As an artist, the biggest truth for me, is that the art is above me. And if I am true to it, if I'm honest with my integrity in how I approach my art, then I will be convinced and everybody else will be convinced. Now what I choose, how I choose to use my art is up to my individual preference, and if it's something that moves me. For example, I've always been drawn towards women-centric themes, and when the subject moves me, then I am obviously thrilled to be working on it, and this project actually is part of a larger project which took 2 years to work on. So it's something that you become one with. So I think art is one of the best vehicles to portray pretty much anything we want to in this world. It's universal in its approach.
And I love that you've taken the mythological aspect of it and made it so contemporary. Thinking of Draupadi as a lawyer in the court of law, I think we need to thank Vidya Subramanian for presenting that. Thank you so much, Vidya, for again enlightening us with your talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, the saying goes, one person with the right idea constitutes the majority. For far too long and far too often, young girls and women have been made to believe that they don't belong in the career, the educational graphs of their journey. The next speaker was told that from her very birth. Imagine not being celebrated for being born and considered being a liability on not only the family but the community itself. Hailing from a poor Orthodox South Indian village, Ashmita Shetty has now grown to be the CEO of Bodhi Tree Foundation. She is the first college graduate from her family, and through her foundation has led doors open for many in her community to be the first generation degree holders and the ones to seek power of education. She is truly remarkable, but more than that, an epitome and proof of the statement, one person with the right idea constitutes the majority. Put your hands together for Ashmita Shetty.
On a dark, cold winter midnight in 2012, my friends and I had come there just after watching the movie English English. For those of you who may not know about the movie, English English is a story of a woman who is mocked at by her family for not knowing English, who tries hard to learn the language and eventually discovers herself in the process. As I stood there in India Gate that night, thinking about the movie, I saw a reflection of myself in the heroine, Sridevi. I was smiling from ear to ear, thinking about her climax speech. Right at that moment, one of my friends ran up to me and she screamed, "Happy Independence Day, Ashwita!" My heart skipped a beat. It was not the 15th of August, but it was the first time I had stepped out on my own in the middle of the night. My eyes welled up in tears. I opened my arms and breathed in the cold air. I was feeling the moment for the first time, freely and fully. This memory is deep in my being. It keeps coming back to me, reminding me time and again why that moment was precious. That moment of freedom was actually a realization that after living 20 years in a rural village, I can break out from everything that keeps me down. I grew up as a poor girl in a rural corner of Tamil Nadu. My parents are beady rollers, neither of whom had been to school. I was conditioned to believe that the three identities that define me are poor, rural, and girl. This meant I was also taught to live a life where I did not have a voice. I could not exercise my choice over marriage, career, or life in general. But more importantly, I was made to believe that I was a liability. This is one version of the same reality for all of us who grew up in a highly demarcated society as India. In our school attendance registers, in addition to our names, our caste identities are also mentioned. In our village panchayat meetings, only the voices of the rich are often heard. In our families, the preference of male child is always foremost. If you take up the case of gender, then there is so much more that can be said. In fact, I grew up listening to a lot of statements like, a palm tree is an asset and a girl child is a liability. Do the household chores. How are you going to behave in your in-laws' home? Girls, you don't have to study well and earn. You will always be taken care of. But boys, you will have to study well to work because you will have responsibilities. The problem today is the way we accepted these kinds of discrimination. We have normalized and internalized discrimination. Speaking for myself, I was so used to being discriminated against. It was normal for me to be silenced, dismissed and ignored, and it was not normal to have freedom, to have voice, and to be able to make choices for myself. Being submissive is a reality I was forced to live in. I did not feel anything was wrong with that. In fact, I was convinced this was how it was supposed to be. So when I stood there in that dark night, 1600 miles away from my village, my entire life flashed before my eyes. I was a rural girl in Tirunelveli. My dreams were contained within my household. If I could think of anything else, then it was only the next household I would marry into. Whenever I recall rolling beads alongside my mother, I could never have imagined a dark winter night where I would own my voice and exercise my choice to stand in the middle of the night. I cried that day because I believe all of us are born into and raised in a reality we simply accept. That is the universe we believe to be true. We are unable to understand that we are part of a discriminatory status quo. After studying for a year in Delhi, I took up my first job with an organization. One of our senior managers ordered the IT manager to block Facebook on all laptops except for 6 laptops. Those 6 laptops belonged to people of his rank or his friends. The reason, of course, was that we were wasting too much time on Facebook. I got furious, I spoke against it and argued that if Facebook has to be blocked, it has to be blocked for everyone. Everyone logs into Facebook after all. But what shocked me the most was that most of my colleagues who were there in the lower rungs of the management thought that management can do anything they want. They were fine with it. I just could not make them realize that this small order blocking access to a networking platform is actually discriminatory. That is the question that fires my work today. How do you wake people from their discriminatory status quo around them? How do you help people to see the truth of their oppressive reality and then work on the even harder work of challenging and changing that reality? As you might have guessed, I quit from that no Facebook company. I started my own non-profit organization called Poetic Foundation. Poetic is an NGO which focuses on helping rural young people to understand the world around them, to challenge their discriminated realities that keeps them down, and to nurture aspirations that they can work towards. We help rural youth to become role models to others. Not only do they change their life by challenging their realities through education, life skills and opportunities, they also give back to their communities. One of our role models is Anita. Anita comes from a remote rural village called Kuripankulam, lives in a 10-foot by 10-foot home. Her parents are farm laborers. Today, at 17, Anita is questioning her reality by working towards a science degree in a top college in India. The other role model for all of our girls is Padma. Padma is the first in her village to go to college. Today, at 27, she is breaking boundaries by still continuing her education in development management. When girls at her age are dolled up for marriage or preparing to be mothers, Padma is questioning her reality by standing up for herself. The third role model for all of us, in fact, is Kaviyarasi. Kaviyarasi put herself through school, through farming and stitching. She's a first-generation graduate in her family, and her graduation is from a top college. But what is more important about Kaviyarasi is that she's back at a village, helping other young people like her to challenge their realities. We are proud of our work and impact, but not everything about me is a rosy picture. 2 years after starting Bodhitri, I attended an entrepreneurship summit. The boys were made to sit on one side and the girls on the other side. There were hardly 10 women as compared to hundreds of men. The instructor started by asking all of us this question: why are you interested in entrepreneurship? As usual, the men dominated the discussion. They gave their answers. And then he looked at the women's side and said, I will not ask anything from this side because you will anyway get married. But this attitude is not unusual. What bothers me till today is that none of the girls spoke up, including me. So it is not easy to challenge our realities. Today, when I take a session on life skills and opportunities, as I tell my kids that they can script their own life, they can build a life of their dreams, I struggle in this different universe, different truth I have seen about myself. I train myself and my kids not only to bring us from margins to the mainstream, but to really make ourselves believe that we deserve to be there in the mainstream. As I walk steadfast on this journey, one incident from my childhood is my guiding light. I would like to leave you with that story. My 3-year-old cousin was playing with a ball. He did not notice an open well and fell into it. Everyone in the village was panicking. They were making a lot of noise, looking around for ropes and everything that can be dropped into that well. My grandma calmly walked to the well. She jumped into it. She saved my cousin's life that day. She did not make a huge fuss out of it. If she had any doubts about herself, she did not show it. That is important when you take up the difficult task of challenging your reality. To just take that plunge calmly and with confidence. Thank you.
Wow. Amazing. Such a beautiful combination of humor, humility, and hunger to do something. I know this for sure that ever since that Entrepreneur Summit, you have really done a lot of stuff with your life, from arranging crowdfunding campaigns to make shift happen to finding collaborators on the internet. You traced me down on Facebook. Now I know what you were doing on YouTube. And she said, you have to collaborate with me. So I know this for sure that you have been able to reach out to your community. Tell us, Ashwita, how important it is for any young person, and especially young girl, to reach out for help when they are beginning.
I think reaching out for help, like for me, it's the most difficult thing because I have been conditioned not to ask for help. So my father used to say, do not borrow money, do not do this. So for me, it was very difficult to ask for help. But I think I have trained myself, that's why I raised you, I think. So I think it is very, very important for people who want to do good because we have less resources. So obviously we have to reach out to people to get the support because the dream is big. You want to do so many things. So yes, I have trained myself to do that. I'm not good at it, but I'm
so one can build the skill to ask for help. And how's the family doing now? Are they more supportive?
Yes. I think last 1 year has been very good. They came to know about Poetic Foundation. Before that, I used to tell I'm teaching in a government school, like somewhere. Well, my parents live far away from me, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, so they didn't know much about poetry. But recently, in the last 1 year, I've told them like I'm running an organization now that it's 5th year. I'm inviting them. So it has been a journey, and I think they've started accepting. Now I'm 27, so they have a lot of questions about what she's going to do with her life. But it's going good. It's better.
And I really wish that the relationship gets more enjoyment as they see you building Bodhi Foundation. Thank you so much, Ashwita. Thank you. I see a big smile on so many faces. And it's so nice to see that. You know, one thing I can tell you about human psychology, of my understanding of speaking with nearly 400,000 people, is that every time you read something or someone says, researchers say, it can be any random fact, you believe it, right? Or someone says, scientists have said. Even if it's like, the sun rises from, well, behind my house, yes. If scientists have said that, we'll agree. The next speaker is a scientist. But she doesn't make up facts. She proves hypotheses. She delves deeper into understanding of them and makes them accessible for the world. She is one of those scientists you would say, when you say scientists say, she proves and stands up for public outreach. She believes in speaking for women issues. I think it's also cool to be the member of all 3 science academies of India, which she is, by the way. We can clap for that. She has won prestigious international and national awards. She has received her PhD and MSc from Caltech, USA, and she has worked with the University of Chicago as a postdoctoral fellow. Then she returned to India to join Tata Institute in Mumbai, India, as a faculty member in 1999. Her research interest focuses on the mechanisms that shape the development of brain. So, I think it is only fair to understand about our brains and how much can we use it from the neuroscientist herself, Dr. Shubha Tore, everyone. Put your hands together.
I'm a neuroscientist and I study the brain. This fantastic, intricate and yet very precise set of wires, because of which we can do everything, because of which we can feel emotion, because of which we can learn, because of which we can interact. But in order for us to be able to feel the gut-wrenching pull of, say, a piece of music or a dance performance, or to feel the impact of a TED Talk. In order for us to learn from our experiences, in order for us to decide to take some action, in order for all of this to happen, our 5 senses have to first bring information from the world outside into our brains. My team and I study these nerve pathways. The nerve pathways of sight, sound, touch that bring the world from outside into the brains so that then the brain can process it, and because of which then the brain can undertake all of the fantastic functions. Indeed, our perception of the world is completely dependent on our senses. If our senses don't bring it in, we don't have it. And in order to persuade you that we are indeed completely dependent on the properties of our circuits, I'm going to involve you in a series of experiments. Nothing bad will happen, I promise. Let's start out simple. Is seeing believing? I think you'll all agree, we see a purple flower with white center, we see a yellow flower, right? And we see it because that's how the properties of our circuits are. But then we're very limited. We can only perceive in the visual spectrum, okay, the colors of the rainbow. We can't see in ultraviolet. If we could see in ultraviolet, which bees can, here's how these flowers would look when they're photographed in ultraviolet light. Amazing patterns emerge, okay? Which may be more relevant to a bee that has to find the center of a flower. So now, how is the flower? Is the lower one yellow or is it red and white? Depends on who you ask, huh? And there are more insects in the world than us, so. Now, okay, you'll say, fine, but for us humans, the relevant color is yellow, the flower is yellow, what's the big deal? We can't even be sure of the colors we perceive. I think we all agree that there is an orange rectangle with a sort of brownie circle in the middle, and the other side a brown rectangle with an orangey circle in the middle. If I just connect the dots, tuck, 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 the 2 centers are actually the same, okay? We perceive them as different because of context. Context is everything. What we see is colored, if you will, by context. So now we can't even be sure the color is the color. We're completely dominated by vision. But now here is a test of your hearing. I'm going to play a video, you just have to hear it.
Ba, 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 ba.
Okay, baby sounds, this wasn't difficult. Everybody heard ba, 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 ba. If you didn't, come see me outside, I'm a neuroscientist. But now, what's this one?
Ba, 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 ba.
Fa, fa, fa. It's going to knock your socks off when I tell you that the 2 soundtracks were the same. It was the same soundtrack, but just the lips were going fa, 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 and there we were. Don't believe me? Watch now. Both of them together. And I'm going to suggest that you look at the one face, you look at the other face, and in the middle, close your eyes. Okay? And see what happens.
Ba, 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 ba.
So now we hear with our eyes, huh? So, okay, this is not a trick I played on you, okay? This is not a trick I played on you, but rather your brain circuitry has tricked you. Your own brain circuitry, no matter how many times I see this, and no matter how much I tell you it's the same soundtrack, your brain circuitry is wired up to emphasize vision over sound, because you usually look at the person you're speaking to, right? So your circuits are wired this way. I'm underscoring the point that our experience of the world is controlled by the properties of our circuits. Okay? So these are the circuits then that we study in my lab. And since no one has yet volunteered to give us their human brain to study, we study them in the mouse. Luckily, mouse and humans share genes. They also have very similar nerve pathways. So in the mouse, we can study how the sensory nerves bring information into the cerebral cortex. The thin green line you see is the sensory nerves in an embryonic mouse that has just entered the cerebral cortex, okay, in the embryo. Now think about it. The embryo is itself growing. It's making all of its cells, its heart, kidney, everything. It's made its brain. In the middle of that brain, all of the nerve pathways are growing, each of them in its precise direction, seemingly knowing what to do. How does this happen? Okay? The situation is not that different than a whole bunch of cars outside, crazy traffic, each going in different directions, but each knowing where it is to go. Okay? There is a long-range signal from the GPS satellite that says, stay on Marine Drive for the next 2 kilometers. And then as you begin to see landmarks, you don't need GPS anymore. You know you have to hang a right at the petrol pump, local cues. Okay? Then when you reach the place you're going to visit, there's usually a gatekeeper. Okay? It's exactly like this in the brain. There are long-range signals, then there are local guidance cues, and then there are gatekeepers. My laboratory was privileged to find one such gatekeeper gene that controls the entry of sensory nerves into the cerebral cortex. And let me give you a glimpse of how it is. Here's a little mouse. And here is a section of a normal mouse brain where the sensory pathways are green. Each little green patch is the sensory nerves that have entered the cortex. And in the high mag, you can see beautiful, intricate nerves. Okay? These have all made precise connections, and it's because of these pathways that the mouse can actually process touch, for example, or vision, or hearing. Now, we have the technology to knock out a particular gene of interest using genetic engineering. Now, what's knockout? What's this strange word? Okay? Imagine if you had never seen a clock before. Okay? A total clock. Imagine one just landed from the sky. And it's got the hour hand going, and it's got the minute hand going, and it's got the second hand going. And now you open this clock, and you take out one gear. You knock out one gear. Because you want to ask, what is all this intricate machinery? What does it do? Okay, so you knock out one gear, and then you notice the hour hand is still going, the minute hand is still going, but the second hand has stopped. And that's how you realize that that one gear must be controlling something to do with the movement of the second hand. So that's how we study the brain, by knocking out genes. We remove one, hypothesizing that it may have a role for this or that, and then we see what doesn't work and what does. And indeed, when we knocked out this gene that we realized was the gatekeeper to the cortex, we found that this nerve pathway is unable to enter the cortex. It just stops short. You can see in the knockout mouse, the green nerves are barely penetrating. And what does this mean? For the mouse, it means that though the eyes are normal, though the ears are normal, the skin is normal, the nerves going from there are normal. This mouse can neither see nor hear nor feel, because the information has not reached the mainframe computer. Okay? So this then is a model system for studying deficiencies of these kinds of senses. Where we're going with in the future is we're going to create a situation where only one modality, say touch or vision, is unable to enter the cortex and the rest do, so that we can model and ask, do the other senses take over, such as in blind people, for example. But that's for the future. For now, I'd like to share an interesting set of ideas with you. Until now, I've underscored how these basic circuits are similar in all of us. Okay, all of us have to have these circuits in order to perceive the world. But you know, they are fine-tuned differently in each individual. And that's what creates our unique differences. Okay, we're not all clones of each other. Now, this fine-tuning and these individual differences come from two things. One, the genes we inherit from our parents, and two, the experience that our circuit gets, the training we give our circuits. Here's an example, one experiment to bring out how really different we all are, how we're all unique. Okay? I think the whole world has been divided, split into two, the Yanis and the Laurels. If you haven't heard this before, or even if you have, listen and I'm going to ask who hears what. Okay, you'll hear Yanni, you may hear Laurel. Here goes.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Okay, how many Yannis? Look around you, many hands going up. How many Laurels? Many hands going up. Okay, people have come to blows over this, okay? You know, people go, are you nuts? How can it be? You know, okay. But remember, we're all unique, right? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply change the sound equalizer settings. It's the same soundtrack, but some frequencies have been boosted and some have been depressed in the same soundtrack. And now let's see what we hear.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask, whatever you heard before, did you switch? Yes. But not every, how many did not switch? Look, so the differences are magnified, right? Okay, we'll do it one more and then you can argue. Okay, now this is a completely different sound equalizer setting. Okay, and now let's hear what happens.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So now, whatever you heard the second time, did you switch? How many switched? Look. Okay. So I hope you can see. I mean, this is only two silly sounds, right? I hope you can see that we're all wired differently. Okay? And from here come our individual uniquenesses. When they tell you in school, you are all special, you are all unique, they mean this. Okay? They don't mean you can hear Yanni and Laurel. Okay, so now, we're different and our circuits can change with experience and with training. What does that mean? It simply means learning something new and practicing it over and over again. Here are some examples: making chapatis, playing an instrument, riding a bicycle. We're not good at this the first time we try, but with practice it gets better and better. They call it muscle memory, but actually it's circuit memory. Okay? It's your circuits that are training, they're growing, they're crystallizing so that you can execute that task better. And this doesn't apply to just tasks, okay? It even applies to the senses. When you hear a piece of music the first time, and if you hear it 100 times, okay, the way you hear it changes, and you appreciate it differently. If a child is exposed to one of many of the Indian languages, the child learns to hear the difference between pa, pa, ba, ba. Okay? If a child has learned only English, okay? So it's really how the sounds you take in, okay, shape your circuits and give you different abilities. How is this even possible? How can our brain change so much? It can change because neurons are not fixed static wires. Okay? They are alive, they grow. And I'm going to show you just how alive a neuron is. I'm going to show you an example of a neuron growing in a culture dish. It's in fact dancing. Those are its input wires and it's doing Bharatanatyam. Yeah? And then one wire says, that's my target over there. I'm going to grow. I'm going to find my target. I'm going to reach it. Now it's doing Kathak. But look at it. These kinds of wires are growing in your brains. In fact, hearing talks today, wires have sprouted in your heads. Connections have happened. This is how we learn new things. And the more I study neuroscience, the more I'm amazed by the capacity of our brains to learn new things and to grow and to take us in new directions. So wouldn't it be a colossal waste of brain power if we don't challenge our circuits, if we don't learn new things? very circuits that give us creativity. These are the circuits with which some people create music. Some people produce music with words and become writers. Some people paint stories with brushes and are fantastic artists. And some of us study the very brain which makes all of this possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Poetic. Whoever is starting a petition to having her as a science teacher in school, I am joining you. I was making all those pa sounds all my school life. All my tuition teacher told me is have some brains. Nobody told me that's related to neuroscience. Alright, let me ask you. How many of you believe in climate change? Raise your hand. Amazing. Here's a fact. Scientists have proved, I'm not making this up, scientists have proved that flash photography is very harmful for climate change in a conference like this. I would request you to not do the flash photography. Did you know you can take a picture without flashing the light for 5 other people in front of you? And if you do that, don't forget to tag us. You remember our hashtag, it's TEDx Gateway Salon. Alright. I'm not supposed to tell you, but let me just, because I like you more, I'll tell you. We have a Nobel laureate, an amazing spoken word poet, a data ninja, and also an Italian surprise for you. Alright? I hope Yash is not looking at me because we have that lined up and coming up for you. But I would like to ask you, what are some of the words that come to your mind when I ask you the question, what can girls do? And please, I'm not taking the diplomatic answer of everything. Of course girls can do everything. But I would like to answer, I would like to see you answer and think of throw the first 3 or 4 words that come to your mind. What can girls do? Change the world. That's cheating. Okay, let's break it down. What does everything mean if I'm a 4-year-old girl? What can girls do? Express. Learn, fly, okay, great. Sorry? Give birth, great. All of those things. I think we're going to start another talk with this. I completely believe you. And here's the good news. Girls can do all of those things. But one word that does not come in our vocabulary as conveniently is girls can code. You never hear them say that word in the first 10 references when we talk about career possibilities. But that's about to change because our next speaker, Aditi Prasad, is one of the most pioneer ninjas of making sure that girls and young boys learn how to code. She is the COO and CIO of Robotics Learning Solution and is here to develop real-world solutions for real-world challenges. Aditi is harnessing the power of robotics, coding, STEM and makerspace to make education more interactive and participative. She is one of the 20 young societal leaders from Asia who are doing incredible work in making societies better, not only by Singapore Summit, but by platforms such as UNESCO's Policy Forum and Future We Lead. I think it is amazing to be known as somebody who's leading the movement when we talk about Indian girls can code. Adding to your vocabulary tonight, more of those sentences. Please put your hands together for Aditi Prasad.
How many of you remember spending endless hours memorizing the periodic table, area and perimeter of a trapezium, on Newton's law of motion, F equal to ma? These were just formulas that we would all mug up and memorize, right? While something like your anniversary or your spouse's birthday is worth memorizing, 12 times 9 is not one of them. Till today, traditional education systems continue to emphasize the remembering of facts instead of nurturing the thinking process. Today, children have access to Google, calculators, and computers, giving them access to information on their fingertips. So what is critical is how they evaluate and analyze all that information to solve problems and make decisions. So let me tell you a story. In my master's program, I had to submit a paper for International Relations 101. This was an open book exam. So after submitting my paper, 2 days later, the grades came in and I got an F. I ran out of the class, tears streaming down my face, shocked at the grade I received. I was a student with distinction in law school, and this grade came completely out of left field. So the next day, I went to my professor to seek clarity, and he said, Aditi, you were supposed to write an analytical research paper. I did not know what he meant. While others wrote what they interpreted, observed, and analyzed, I wrote what I read and probably memorized. This is true for majority of students in our country, where memorization supersedes critical thinking. So while I had to figure out and relearn skills at the master's level, today we have an opportunity to change the way how children learn and think and better equip them for their future. I am Aditi Prasad, and I am committed to transform the education system in our country through robotics and coding education and inspire young children to be innovators and creators. In the next 10 to 15 years, artificial intelligence, data science, machine learning, 3D printing, and Internet of Things will give rise to a new set of opportunities. According to a World Economic Forum report, 1 in 4 adults reported a mismatch between the skills they have and the skills they need for their current job, which denotes a significant skill gap between the products of the traditional education system and the expectation from today's technologically advanced workplace. In addition, by 2022, 54% of all employees will require significant reskilling. Companies like Infosys, TCS, and Cognizant have continually been investing millions towards reskilling programs. So the Industrial Revolution enabled countries like Britain and other European countries to conquer the world country by country. If we don't equip our young children with skills to meet this next tech revolution, the digital divide will widen and leave India economically and culturally far, far behind. Therefore, the question is, what skills are our children learning in school, and are they learning the right ones? And as parents, educators, and role models, how are we preparing our children to meet these opportunities of the future? So my sister Deepthi and I co-founded Indian Girls Code to inspire young girls to be innovators, creators, and leaders of the future. We wanted to transform the education they received by giving them access to tech and coding skills and empowering them to be the change they wanted to see in the world. While our programs run across all sectors of society, we focus on underprivileged girls who do not have access to quality education and who, under the pressure of poverty and tradition, may not even realize their STEM skills. Also to add, we don't leave the boys out. Through digital tools such as robotic toys, coding games, learning apps, and so on, technology is enabling children to learn and be creative in fun and interactive ways. So my 3-year-old learned how to count, picking up sticks and stones in the garden, and has grasped the concept of left and right the way programming his toy. When children play and explore with blocks and sensors and understand how hardware and software interplay with each other, they can create solutions to problems they see around them. When children access and play with so many toys like robotic toys and coding games, they develop 21st century skills. Also, when children play with tools that they understand and have so much fun using, they develop confidence, curiosity, imagination, enthusiasm, and persistence, and also build STEM literacy. Today, I want to share some amazing stories of what our kids have been up to. So typically in our programs, a child walks into a class filled filled with toys, filled with drones and blocks. It's the easiest way to get a 6-year-old to pay attention in class. This is a story of 10-year-old Vasumati from Vadaganallur school in Tamil Nadu. Vasumati explored the concepts of levers and force and discovered Newton's law of motion all by herself by building a seesaw with blocks. In 2017, in a classroom in Chennai, the children were given a challenge to build a tower, building a structure that was earthquake resistant. Their models were seismic tested with the help of a vibrating machine, and we saw some amazing designs that stood the test, like this one made by Adi Dev and Karthik. In Seva Samajam school in Chennai, 13-year-olds Bhavani, Kirtika and their team constructed an autonomous robot. Much like the Google driverless car, their robot interfaced with sensors can carry a payload, detect obstacles and avoid falling off a cliff. And by the way, this team is taking their creation to compete in an international competition in Jordan this June. So children of grade 11 created a product, right from ideation and sketching to design, prototype and testing. So these children designed a car, some inspired by animals and others their favorite superhero. Then they made scaled down versions using 3D printers and tested their prototype in a wind tunnel for aerodynamics. Isn't it amazing what kids do these days? So digital play is not going away and is here to stay. Just like alphabets are the foundation for reading and numbers are the foundation for math, coding is digital literacy. With open source programming languages like the Pocket Code app from the Graz University of Technology, children can create their own apps by simply dragging and dropping bricks on a mobile screen. So just like Lego blocks, you put the blocks together and the stacks of blocks create a story or a game. Now you remember the car the child built earlier? Now imagine if she creates an app with Pocket Code and using Google Talk on her smartphone can now control her car with her own voice. So this is our vision, to bring fun and powerful learning experiences and technology to kids all across the country, inspiring them to be creators, innovators, and leaders of a brighter tomorrow. I want to leave you with a thought by Professor Seymour Papert from the MIT Media Lab, whose ideas and inventions transform the way children learn and think today. He said, "The scandal of education is that every time you teach a child something, you deprive that child the pleasure and benefit of discovery. And this is where our work starts. And maybe one day we'll see 10-year-old Vasumati or 13-year-old Kirtika solving climate change and discovering the solution to cancer." Thank you.
Thank you so much. Aditi is a short proof and also someone who is decoding that girls can code. You see what I did there? I would like to tell you a story. I was standing in the wings and just something that my Hindi teacher from school had told me. I thought it would be fun to tell you. She told me the story of a young girl who runs to a construction site near her village and approaches the first man who is laying the bricks. She goes to him and says, "What are you doing?" The laborer or the mason looking at the young girl says, "Can't you see I'm laying the bricks?" She says, "Okay." She runs to the second mason and asks the same question, who's doing the very same job. "What are you doing?" He says, "Can't you see I'm building a wall?" She runs to the third mason who's doing the exact same job as the previous two and says, "What are you doing?" And he says, "Can't you see I'm building a temple?" They all are doing the same job, but looking at it from very different perspectives, and it's not wrong or right, either one of them. But it is interesting, I think, in the women and the gender empowerment movement to ask ourselves, where do we stand? Are we laying the brick, or the wall, or building a temple or a colosseum? The next speaker is someone who represents not only the idea and the ideology of what you can do with your voice as soon as you realize you have something to say. It's phenomenal. She's 14 years old and is part of an amazing organization called Slam Out Loud. A year ago, I received a phone call to be a mentor to this spoken word brigade of art students. I asked every question except the age of these spoken word artists. To my big surprise, on the first call I encountered, all this brigade had was children from age 12 to 16. And I asked myself, this organization is developing from under-resourced communities these art champions. And the girl you will hear from tonight is someone who loves poetry, dance, and often allows herself to see the world of laying the brick, building the wall, and creating the temple all together. Put your hands together for our next speaker.
I come from a small family in Tughlakabad in New Delhi, where words are not given much importance. But for me, they are agents to make this world a better place to live in. I started writing poetry when I was in 6th grade, but my school never helped me in seeking platforms or developing my skills. In fact, they discouraged me, saying that arts is for people who are not hardworking. Despite this, I continued to write. Finally, 1 year ago, I joined Slam Out Loud, where I was given the support and encouragement I needed to start sharing what I wanted to say. Surrounded by other young poets, I'm always inspired by their dedication and their courage. There are 15 of us in the group, and we meet on alternate weekends to share our poetry and give feedbacks to each other. One of my most memorable moments with them was when we were invited to perform in front of a huge audience together. Finally, after numerous meltdowns and rehearsals, we went up on the stage and performed. At the end, we all stood together, held each other's hand. We all were smiling. I've never felt more powerful in my whole life. I remember when I was performing for the first time on stage, I was shaking with nervousness and didn't know what would happen. I never could have imagined my dreams would come true. Over time, I have developed a deep connection with stage and with poetry. I understand this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be performing at different platforms, confronting issues like gender discrimination and loopholes in the education system. I'm supposed to prove that words can inspire us to think, to question, and to be the change. Now I'm here to present a poetry in front of you all. Indian nomenclature, finding out numerous words from Hindu literature, is just like those beautiful but unreal flowers that are just for display. They named their daughter Icha, but never allowed her to wish for education. They called their wife Virangana, but always forced her to be on her knees. Durga always has to be silent and polite in front of her husband. Kalpana is never allowed to imagine a comfortable life. Prerna is never allowed to express her inspiration. Sapna has to quit her dream to prove the world that she is a good mother. Adarsh is never taught to respect his wife's ambition. And Saraswati never gets to see a school. is just making others fool, the people who are named after flowers never get to bloom. And I am named Muskan. But whenever I'm forbidden to go out alone, it feels like a pure shame. A pure shame that I have a bright smile. Thank you.
Wow. You know, when I was 14, Muskan, you know what I wrote? There's a cat sitting on a mat eating a rat, and that is that. And I'm hearing you and I have goosebumps thinking, wow, here is someone who is 14 and a spoken word poet. What does it mean for you?
Poetry means a lot for me, and I feel that I have started questioning and I have started seeking for answers because of poetry.
Wow. And what do the other students in your class think of you?
Well, I'm lucky enough. There have been times when my family and my society have tried to pull me down, but my friends and my classmates were always there to support me and encourage me.
And those who don't like you, you can always write a poem about them, right? And perform. All right. Thank you so much, Muskan. Thank you so much. I must tell you, we have done it. We are trending on Twitter, everybody. Put your hands together for yourselves. The hashtag is TEDx Gateway Salon and it is trending right now, and I love our audience. Not only you have the brightest smiles, but you're the most generous audience. Somebody left their iPhone. And we can do a giveaway, but Vandana and Zita have been messaging constantly. So whoever's iPhone this is, you can take it from backstage, right? Thank you, or we can gift it to somebody. Alright, you know I collect life lessons, and it would be very unfair to not have a moment dedicated to that. I'm giving you a minute to think of any woman in your life who's had an impact, and think of the best advice you've received from that woman, and turn to the person next to you and share your advice with them. And we call it hashtag wisdom of women. So I'm giving you 1 minute. Get to know your neighbor if you don't already know them. Or the life lesson. Your time starts now. Alright, thank you. It's the most beautiful amalgamation of some revelatory faces. First of all, you all look wise. You're glowing with the wisdom shared by your partner. Some were so awkward. Some faces were so awkward. As soon as I started the timer on, they were like, okay. Do you have some wisdom for me? And some were like, I have to tell you about 5 women. But the good news is, when you step out of this auditorium and you tag and you put out the wisdom that you receive from your partner and you put the hashtag wisdom of women and TEDx Gateway Salon, I promise you, I'm going to travel with it and teach it all across the world, designed into activities. So make sure you share it with us. Thank you. You know our fabulous sponsors and partners. The TEDx Gateway Breaking Barriers Salon is presented by the wonderful Aditya Birla Group and All Out. You have to check out their zones, which I'm going to give you information in a minute. We are in partnership with First Post, NCPA, Genesis, BCW, The Better India, Beam, Sanatory, and other partners include Green Snack Co., Sleepy Owl Coffee, Eatalish, Style Cracker, Alkaline Premium Enhanced Water. Now, we're going to have a break, alright, so you can process all the information. But here's what you can do in the break. The Aditya Birla Group has a fun challenge awaiting for you guys in the lobby. An engagement with 3 simple steps. Aim, shoot, and win. So your shooter skills can come in handy here. It's all about breaking barriers tonight for women's growth. So go check it out, see how many you can break in 10 seconds. Also don't forget to check out the augmented reality tech surprise that awaits you in the Big in Your Life installation in the lobby. Just pick up the phone and point at the installation to watch the magic happen. And also the Aditya Birla Group Big in Your Life part. The all-out announcement is about requesting all mothers here to visit the all-out activation zone in the lobby and tie the protection knot as a reminder to share your identity.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
Let's turn the world inside out. It's just a beginning.
We have achieved remarkable things. We can be more, we can be much more.
Science is clever, but great creativity is more magical. And now we need that magic,
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
Let's turn the world inside out. It's just a beginning.
We have achieved remarkable things. We can be more, we can be much more.
Science is clever, but great creativity is more magical. And now we need that magic.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Take a moment, take a breath.
I'm a believer. The science is clear. We have to get off of oil. We owe it to our children and grandchildren. I'm a believer. We can't just drill our way out. We can't just bomb our way out. We're gonna invent our way out. Working together. We need to think big. We need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
The city of the future calls on you to see it through. Will you dream with me? Will you dream with me? Will you build with me? Will you build with me?
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
I'm a believer.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have 3 billion new minds coming online to do that which we must do, to do that which we must do.
We need to think big, we need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle, imagine the future. Remember the past.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test. Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
Let's turn the world inside out. It's just a beginning.
We have achieved remarkable things. We can be more, we can be much more.
Science is clever. But great creativity is more magical. And now we need that magic.
The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Take a moment, take a breath.
I'm a believer. The science is clear. We have to get off of oil. We owe it to our children and grandchildren. I'm a believer. We can't just drill our way out. We can't just bomb our way out. We're gonna invent our way out. Working together. We need to think big. We need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
The city of the future calls on you to see it through. Will you dream with me? Will you dream with me? Will you build with me? Will you build with me?
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
I'm a believer.
Change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have 3 billion new minds coming online to do that which we must do, to do that which we must do.
We need to think big, we need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle, imagine the future. Remember the past.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test. Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
Let's turn the world inside out. It's just a beginning.
We have achieved remarkable things. We can be more, we can be much more.
Science is clever, but great creativity is more magical. And now we need that magic.
The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Take a moment, take a breath.
I'm a believer. The science is clear. We have to get off of oil. We owe it to our children and grandchildren. I'm a believer. We can't just drill our way out. We can't just bomb our way out. We're gonna invent our way out, working together. We need to think big, we need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
The city of the future calls on you to see it through. Will you dream with me? Will you dream with me? Will you build with me? Will you build with me?
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
I'm a believer.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have 3 billion new minds coming online to do that which we must do, to do that which we must do.
We need to think big, we need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle, imagine the future. Remember the past.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test. Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
Let's turn the world inside out. It's just a beginning.
We have achieved remarkable things. We can be more, we can be much more.
Science is clever, but great creativity is more magical. And now we need that magic,
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Take a moment, take a breath.
I'm a believer. The science is clear. We have to get off of oil. We owe it to our children and grandchildren. I'm a believer. We can't just drill our way out. We can't just bomb our way out. We're gonna invent our way out. Working together. We need to think big. We need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
The city of the future calls on you to see it through. Will you dream with me? Will you dream with me? Will you build with me? Will you build with me?
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
I'm a believer.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have 3 billion new minds coming online to do that which we must do. To do that which we must do.
We need to think big. We need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle, imagine the future. Remember the past.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test. Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
Let's turn the world inside out. It's just a beginning.
We have achieved remarkable things. We can be more, we can be much more.
Science is clever, but great creativity is more magical. And now we need that magic.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Take a moment, take a breath.
I'm a believer. The science is clear. We have to get off of oil. We owe it to our children and grandchildren. I'm a believer. We can't just drill our way out. We can't just bomb our way out. We're gonna invent our way out. Working together. We need to think big. We need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
The city of the future calls on you to see it through. Will you dream with me? Will you dream with me? Will you build with me? Will you build with me?
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
I'm a believer.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have 3 billion new minds coming online to do that which we must do. To do that which we must do.
We need to think big. We need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle, imagine the future. Remember the past.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test. Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
Let's turn the world inside out. It's just a beginning.
We have achieved remarkable things. We can be more, we can be much more.
Science is clever, but great creativity is more magical. And now we need that magic.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Take a moment, take a breath.
I'm a believer. The science is clear. We have to get off of oil. We owe it to our children and grandchildren. I'm a believer. We can't just drill our way out. We can't just bomb our way out. We're gonna invent our way out. Working together. We need to think big. We need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
The city of the future calls on you to see it through. Will you dream with me? Will you dream with me? Will you build with me? Will you build with me?
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
I'm a believer.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have 3 billion new minds coming online to do that which we must do, to do that which we must do.
We need to think big, we need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to tell.
The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle, imagine the future. Remember the past.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to tell. Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to tell.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
Let's turn the world inside out. It's just a beginning.
We have achieved remarkable things. We can be more, we can be much more.
Science is clever, but great creativity is more magical. And now we need that magic.
The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Take a moment, take a breath.
I'm a believer. The science is clear. We have to get off of oil. We owe it to our children and grandchildren. I'm a believer. We can't just drill our way out. We can't just bomb our way out. We're gonna invent our way out. Working together. We need to think big, we need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to tell.
The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
The city of the future calls on you to see it through. Will you dream with me? Will you dream with me? Will you build with me? Will you build with me?
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
I'm a believer.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have 3 billion new minds coming online to do that which we must do, to do that which we must do.
We need to think big, we need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to tell.
The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle, imagine the future. Remember the past.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to tell. Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time for TED.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
Let's turn the world inside out. It's just a beginning.
We have achieved remarkable things. We can be more, we can be much more.
Science is clever, but great creativity is more magical. And now we need that magic, that magic, that magic, that magic.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place. Some other place.
Take a moment, take a breath.
I'm a believer. The science is clear. We have to get off of oil. We owe it to our children and grandchildren. I'm a believer. We can't just drill our way out. We can't just bomb our way out. We're gonna invent our way out. Working together. We need to think big. We need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time for TED.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
The city of the future calls on you to see it through. Will you dream with me? Will you dream with me? Will you build with me? Will you build with me?
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
I'm a believer.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have 3 billion new minds coming online to do that which we must do. To do that which we must do.
We need to think big. We need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time for TED.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle, imagine the future. Remember the past.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time for TED. Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time for TED.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
Let's turn the world inside out. It's just a beginning.
We have achieved remarkable things. We can be more, we can be much more.
Science is clever, but great creativity is more magical. And now we need that magic, that magic, that magic, that magic.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place. Some other place.
Take a moment, take a breath.
I'm a believer. The science is clear. We have to get off of oil. We owe it to our children and grandchildren. I'm a believer. We can't just drill our way out. We can't just bomb our way out. We're gonna invent our way out. Working together. We need to think big. We need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
The city of the future calls on you to see it through. Will you dream with me? Will you dream with me? Will you build with me? Will you build with me?
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
I'm a believer.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have 3 billion new minds coming online to do that which we must do. To do that which we must do.
We need to think big. We need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle, imagine the future. Remember the past.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test. Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
Let's turn the world inside out. It's just a beginning.
We have achieved remarkable things. We can be more, we can be much more.
Science is clever, but great creativity is more magical. And now we need that magic.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Take a moment, take a breath.
I'm a believer. The science is clear. We have to get off of oil. We owe it to our children and grandchildren. I'm a believer. We can't just drill our way out. We can't just bomb our way out. We're gonna invent our way out. Working together. We need to think big. We need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind, it's that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
The city of the future calls on you to see it through. Will you dream with me? Will you dream with me? Will you build with me? Will you build with me?
We have the tools, we have have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
I'm a believer.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have 3 billion new minds coming online to do that which we must do, to do that which we must do.
We need to think big, we need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle, imagine the future. Remember the past.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test. Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
Let's turn the world inside out. It's just a beginning.
We have achieved remarkable things. We can be more, we can be much more.
Science is clever, but great creativity is more magical. And now we need that magic,
The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Take a moment, take a breath.
I'm a believer. The science is clear. We have to get off of oil. We owe it to our children and grandchildren. I'm a believer. We can't just drill our way out. We can't just bomb our way out. We're gonna invent our way out, working together. We need to think big, we need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine what it's like to be some other person in some other place.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
The city of the future calls on you to see it through. Will you dream with me? Will you dream with me? Will you build with me? Will you build with me?
We have the tools, we have the passion.
We can be more, we can be much more.
I'm a believer.
We can change the world if we defy the impossible.
We have 3 billion new minds coming online to do that which we must do, to do that which we must do.
We need to think big, we need to think cheap. We need to think about the problem differently.
Wonder, insight, ideas. It's time to test.
The miracle of your mind is that you can see the world as it isn't. We can imagine the future. We can remember the past. The miracle, imagine the future. Remember the past.
Wonder.
Can we have a huge round of applause and some energy? Those who are not clapping, great. We have names of all those who were at the bar. Let me start. Don't worry. You know, the phenomenal aspect about breaking barriers
is that there's so much inspiration right here on stage and so much so in the very audience. I had just 7 minutes out in the foyer area of interacting, and I saw some incredible men and some truly exemplary women. We have in the audience with us some phenomenal people that I got to interact with. Ms. Dolly Thackeray, where are you? Thakur. Received recently the Lifetime Achievement Award in Theatre, everybody. I met somebody called Imran Khan, who is the only unicycle violinist, as he told me, of our country, everybody. That's phenomenal. I met someone called Rashmi, who volunteers her time in coaching cancer survivors at Tata Memorial Hospital. Phenomenal. From Dolly ma'am to Rashmi, there is a legacy of people who are breaking barriers into what is possible for all of us. And I wanted to start with a small activity. I love this. I've played it with a girl named Shrishti Bakshi who walked across the country with nearly 1.5 lakh women and men. And I wanted to do it tonight with you. So I'm drawing 3 columns on my cue sheet. The first column is called man. I'm leaving the middle column empty, and I'm calling the third column woman. Now, for the men in the room, I would like to ask you, what is the first few words that come to your mind when I say the word woman? Love, all right. Okay. What did you say? Mother and? Okay, wife. Affection, okay. Courage, wisdom, exceptional. Okay, let's give the men a chance. I can sense their tonality going down. Women in the room, what do you think are some of the qualities that you would, or some of the words that come to your mind when I say the word man? What? Risk? Repressed? Well, that's a good start for us. All right, who else? Offensive, all right, I hear that. Handsome, okay. Strong and caregiver, okay, that's fantastic. I feel there is some love missing from this section. Did you come to TEDx Gateway Salon? Tell me one more word. Okay, let's do this. They were just waiting for me to come to them. Okay, what are now the differences, the significant differences between a man and a woman? Let's say the physical one. Somebody said mother. I'm sure men cannot be child bearers or mother in that sense. What are other? Physical anatomy? Can we write that? Yeah, physical anatomy is one difference. What else? Spatial? Judgment of space. Okay, I'm going to write that. I've never heard that. Judgment of space. Emotional intelligence and menstruation as well, right? I'm going to write that. We need to talk about that. All right, so I have all of these words that you just told me written down here. You said man, repressed, offensive, handsome, strong, caregiver, insecure, physical judgment, emotional intelligence, good, more or less? Women have more. All right, that's great. Women, you said love, mother, affection, courage, wisdom, great. Let me just switch this on my cue sheet. I'm cutting the first column and renaming it woman, and cutting the last section and calling it man. And let me now ask you again, intelligent audience. You said a man is repressed. Can a woman be repressed too? All right. You said a woman is the symbol of love. Can man be a symbol of love as well? Awesome. Can a man be offensive? Of course, you already said that. Women can be offensive too. Can they be beautiful or good looking? Yes. Strong? Can women be strong? Caregiver? Insecure? Physically fit? And have sometimes low emotional intelligence, some. And men, can men also be affectionate? They can't be childbearer, so I'm going to write that in the middle section. Not childbearing. Can men be courageous? Yes. Okay. Can men be wise? Hello? I'm just kidding. All right, so men can they be exceptional? Think of your fathers and your husbands. Okay, they can't menstruate, right? So I'm going to write that in the middle section, although some research says that they can PMS. Well, so out of what I discovered with you in last 5 minutes, the center section says physical anatomy, childbearing, and menstruation. These are the 3 primary biological differences that we are born with. And you know what's the other stuff? It's called gender. It's constructed. You proved in matter of 4 minutes that actually women can be strong. Men can be loving and affectionate. We don't have to label each other. Chimamanda Ngozi beautifully says, people create culture, and culture dominates thinking. And our culture today dominates the thinking that women are less capable, less elite, less intellectual, and less protective than men. And because it's culture and it's gender, guess what? You can change it in 4 minutes. Because nature did not create that as a difference. Thank you very much. You see, at a very important juncture last year, I was in Bangalore teaching in a school with Shrishti, the girl who walked. And in the same class, there were class 6 students, boys and girls. And I asked a boy, what's the biggest challenge a girl faces today? This is class 6th boy, so age 12, 13. He says, he thinks for a minute, and he looks peeking at me, and he says, I know the answer. I said, yes, tell me, what is the biggest challenge girls face in the country today or the world? He said, pimples. That is their biggest concern. And I turned to the girl in the same class and I said, can you tell me what is the biggest challenge you face? And she says, it's harassment. While coming to school, there are men who pass lewd comments in my society, and I have to swim through it every day. The 2 alternative realities of the same circumstance and the same surrounding is good for us to think we have a long way to come when it comes to breaking barriers. But there's a poem I remember that I read in first year college, and the poem goes like, she does not know her beauty. She thinks her brown body has no glory. If she could dance naked under palm trees and see her reflection in the river water, she would know. But there are no palm trees on the street, and the dishwater gives back no images. She does not know her beauty. It's a poem. Yes, I think we first need to clap for that. And you will be surprised to know, as I was, it's a poem written by an 18-year-old man nearly 2 centuries ago named William Waring Cunny, and the poem is called No Images. I love that poem so much because in just 8 lines, William Waring Cunny defines 2 of the major challenges we face in the women empowerment movement today. One is women allowing themselves to be seen through the lens of societal prejudice. And the other is the discrimination at the time was apartheid and today much more. It has been fundamental and instrumental in shaping our belief systems for the second notion, which is allowing this lens of society to be seen. Not many women will have the palm trees and the river water to see themselves in. And so they will have to find the courage to look in the dishwater, and they will have to find the courage to stand in the street and dance their dance. Spoken word poetry is often my tool and instrument of presenting my ideas. And I love our next speaker because she does the same. Her name is Ankita Shah. And I met Ankita 7 years ago. In the 7 years that we spoke, met, heard each other, I know this for sure. She stands to tell poetry and weave fabric of both past and present, memories and mortar. And there is unseen and seen too. She is the founder and the co-founder of the Poetry Club that allows people to use the art of poetry to express themselves. She is phenomenally talented, beautifully gifted, and a woman who is allowing herself to be seen both in the river water and the dishwater. Put your hands together for Ankita Shah, everybody.
My mother grew up 5 days a month, confined to a mud house. Here, the first beam of the morning light cut bodies into halves, turned their breaths into its thick, greasy air. Here, days smelt like soap but could not clean their stained dignity. The nights would bring the hiss of a snake or the measured steps of a ghost in between the sounds of deep sighs and short breaths morphed into acceptance. All girls in the neighborhood were exiled here when the womb undressed itself of motherhood. Even when their bodies were teaching them rebellion, the girls grew into women consumed by what this room taught them. My mother learned suffocation and shame together. But when she left the mud house, she sprinted far from its closing walls, from its holy strangulation to create a home for me where menstruating was as inconspicuous as coming home an hour past midnight. From where every mountain or river could be crossed alone, here loving someone meant giving all in. So this time, when my grandfather decided to visit us from Nepal, told her as a passing remark, pointing to me, that if she marries outside our community, I will never step into this house. She laughed, then broke to him that he must prepare for his exile. It took me a while to understand that my mother raised me very differently from her own upbringing. Putting my grandfather in exile was symbolic of the many problematic traditions she threw out of the window to make space for me to breathe. It was here in the company of my mother and this liberating, expanding home that I grew up well educated, that I found my love for poetry, that I moved from a job in tax and numbers to a job in arts and culture, and that I expressed with joy my love for a boy whose religion wasn't the same as mine. I realized that in the face of our struggles, our ask for equality, so much depends on the relationship us women share with each other. That if we support each other, help each other, have each other's backs, we not only empower each other, but also challenge and break the power structures. Think about the times when women have extended their support to you or you to them. How did it make you feel? And what did you see change? I'm here to talk about those small gestures, those small beginnings, those small acts of support that we as women extend to each other. From my journey as a woman, as a poet, I want to talk about 4 such learnings and 4 such acts of support that have made a huge difference to me. 1. Listen. It is said that the worldview has been patriarchal for over 7,000 years now. That means most of art, culture, policies, decisions, religious texts have been created by men. What does it take to change this? Maybe the answer is listening. The first time I ever wrote poetry was when I was only 12 years old. One of my teachers in school, her name was Sushma Suresh, told me to watch the news one evening. They were going to cover a story about endangered olive ridley turtles struggling to survive against a power plant on the coasts of Orissa. She said, write a poem in response to that. When I showed her what I wrote, she insisted that we could get it published in a magazine. Now, it was 100% not that great. It was preachy, it had forced rhymes, but here was a woman who showed the willingness to listen to my story, to the story of a young girl. She instilled in me the belief that I will be heard, and that has been the most powerful, yet the most simple act of support that brought me to write poetry. When women write poems, stories, create films, technology, policies, decisions, they are changing what has been the dominant perspective for 7,000 years. They are creating a fresh narrative that acknowledges us as equals. And a small act of support is to let them know that we are listening. 2, break away. I learned from my mother that we as women need to break the legacy of customs that don't help other women. As women, we have been made responsible to not only adhere to the definitions of what it is to be a good woman, but also are expected to pass these on to other women, as mothers, as teachers, as sisters, as aunts. I'm sure my mother was at a crossroads too. She could either raise me with the same values that she was raised with, or with those that actually enriched me. When she decided to make menstruation really just about menstruating and delinked it with all the other customs that she was made to go through, she broke the chain that had held her and generations of women before her in exile. She brought about a significant shift in power for me and for the women who would come after us. It is in this little act of support, of breaking away from the traditions that we are expected to pass, that we give other women a fresh start, a way to redefine who they are and who they can be. 3, expand the meaning of beauty. Growing up, my sister and I shared a love-hate relationship with each other. I would tease her about her eating habits, hinting that she could never be beautiful as per the beauty standards of our society. She would get back at me by pointing at my breasts, signaling that I was not going to pass the test either. Now, what happened in jest between siblings stayed with us far into our adulthood, where we accepted the norms of what it was to be whole, ideal, loved, wanted, and desired. We as women could do ourselves a big favor if we defined our own meanings of beauty around who we are and not around who we ought to be, not around what Instagram and films and magazines tell us to be. We need to expand its meaning so far and wide that we include every single woman in it. I tell my sister as often as I can that she is beautiful, she is smart, she is kind, hoping that I can reverse some of the ideas I raised her with. This is the 3rd act of support: expand the meaning of beauty. 4, fight for more space, not its occupants. Now, take for example the ladies' coach of the Mumbai local. For those of you who don't know, at peak hours when there is absolute congestion, the ladies' coach of the Mumbai local turns into a space of great tension. Comments about what someone is wearing, how they're sitting, how they're always on their phone, and how much space they're occupying are flung at each other with ease. Now, beyond the popular narrative that women are women's own enemies is actually a deep need and a deep lack of space. Not just here, but also at homes, at offices, at schools, colleges. We are constantly struggling for space for our voices, our bodies, our opinions. It is not difficult to then start believing that we are competing with other women if we've been told so often that there isn't enough for us girls. This brings me to the fourth act of support, which is to realign. To see that our fight is not with other women. Our lives are not game shows where we are expected to succeed against immeasurable constraints thrown our way. We deserve more. More seats, more coaches, more power, more pay, more for all women, and that is the only fight we are investing in. The ladies' coach teaches me one more thing. When we are together, we feel safer and stronger. The road ahead for us to make this world an equal space is a tough one. And sometimes we may encounter our own shadows blocking our paths. If we recognize our own biases, unlearn what does not empower us, and reach out to women or one other woman to begin with, I believe the road will be less difficult. There is a bigger fight, a bigger ask on the table that we have placed for ourselves. Let's look out for each other.
Thank you so much, Ankita. As Maya Angelou says it, poetry is music for human voice, and we all can use it as much as we can, even if we don't sing it in the right octave. You see, okay, tell me about what you think of this quote. Complaining about things that worry you is not a strategy for change. The only thing that matters is the actions you take. It's amazing, right? When I heard that, I wanted to give the person who said the quote a Nobel Prize. And I found she already has one. Jody Williams is a phenomenal human being and a woman of substance. And in the process of speaking to her, I had an engaging conversation and I was able to take out her life lesson. She told me life has taught her that life is no popularity contest. You must do what's right, what's needed, even if there are no people decorating you with applauds, awards, and accolades. That's a lesson for all of us, but primarily so in Jody's case, with the journey she's had with creating impact all around the world. You can actually zoom in to see why she says that. Jody Williams is a political and civil rights activist known for her work in banning anti-personnel landmines, her defense of human rights, especially those of women, and her efforts to promote new understandings of security in today's world have been applauded all around the world. She was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1997 for her work towards the banning and clearing of anti-personnel landmines. In 2006, Jody Williams started and now chairs the Nobel Women's Initiative along with her sister Nobel laureate Dr. Shireen Ebadi of Iran. Her campaign growth has seen 1,300 organizations in 95 countries working towards eliminating anti-personnel landmines. You know, what's cool of all that? She has 21 honorary degrees, has been named, wow, has been named 100 most powerful women by Forbes magazine, and it's truly someone who is a force of change. Put your hands together because gracing us is Nobel laureate Jody Williams.
Oh, my mother loves that kind of introduction. I am not the Nobel Peace Prize. It is an award that went to myself and the tens of thousands of people around the world who work together to bring about change and ban anti-personnel landmines. I remain, Jody Williams, a grassroots activist. I do not think I am more important. I'm going to have to take my shoes off. I'm sorry, people. It's too hot in here, and when I'm at home, I don't wear shoes, so. I'm just another grassroots activist. Anybody can change the world, and as you have heard from the other women, some of them have tackled things that blow my mind. I'm serious. I'm humbled to be in the company of such women. But I have to say, I'm not supposed to be talking about this, but I don't care. I know women around the world from the most poor places I have ever seen who have had the courage to stand up to armies and win. I wear this in honor of all of the women in the world who are unarmed civilians. I think most of us are aware that today it is considered that at least 80% of all casualties in war are women and children. But I know some of those women, and they are not just casualties, they are survivors. They have empowered themselves to help other women overcome the horrors of war. I wear this for them. I'm going to try to do a little slideshow. I have to say I do not do this, so I may make a mess, and if it does, I'm sorry in advance. In the year 2000, the UN Security Council issued Resolution 1325. Some of you here may know about it. In it, it did recognize the suffering of women in war. Everybody knows that. What was different is that in that resolution, they also recognized that it is women who struggle to maintain family, community, and a semblance of peace, even in the worst days of war. Then, the men of the Security Council mandated that we should be allowed to be part of peace negotiations, peace building, and trying to stop the violence. I don't know why a man has to allow me to do that. In fact, I've never been allowed, I just do. I am a human being. Any woman... Oh, I'm going to have to be quick. This is going too fast. One of the barriers we're still having trouble crushing is that of women's serious involvement in security. I think we need a new definition of what security is in today's world, this globalized world. And I think by using that pie chart of my country's budget, it gives a little bit of an idea. You can either focus on human beings and making them secure in their environment, thus making your communities and home a more secure place, or you can continue to follow the myth that national security is supreme, and that if the nation is secure, its people are. They don't care about the people. I'm not lying. They care about the power that weapons and war gives them, and they care about maintaining it. In my country, Mr. Trump, yes, I won't go there because then I would only be talking about Mr. Trump. It's not my fault I did not vote for him. I won't go on because I could really get rough. You'll notice on the right side of that lovely budget that military expenditures make up 61% of our budget. I can't even wrap my brain around that. And then I think it's 7% more for veterans benefits. Those are the things I think are cool because people have been sent to war to die and be mutilated, while the men who send them to war do not see their children going. So this means that war and the aftermath of war takes up 68% of the budget of the United States of America. Mind-blowing. We only give 2% for diplomacy. What does that tell us about what we care about in terms of security? We care about weapons and war. 5% to health and 5% to education, and everybody knows that what makes a nation strong is the education of its people. So I want to change that. I want to see that national security framework shift to human security. I would like to see the budget totally flipped. Well, maybe I wouldn't even give them anything, but that's a lie. That's a lie, because I do believe there is a place for the military and a place for police. If we were all saints, we wouldn't need either. But that ain't the case. One of the things that I'm working on now is something that Aditi was talking about, robots. But her kind of robots are lovely. The kind that me and my colleagues are working to stop are not lovely at all. They are killer robots. Whenever I talk about killer robots, people think I'm talking about the Predator or the Reaper. I'm not sure which one they look alike. But note the name, Predator, Reaper of Death, right? This thing, you can see the missiles under its wing. This thing can fly autonomously for thousands of miles. And then it sees something, and the guy sitting back safe, the pilot, is looking at his computer screen. And he sees something that he thinks is a little suspicious. So he sends the drone down to look at what it might be. And then if he thinks it's an appropriate target, or if he thinks it might be a terrorist, I'm not joking. In my country, you can kill someone that might be a terrorist. He fires the Hellfire missiles and blasts them to smithereens. That is a drone. A human being is making the target and kill decisions. A killer robot does not have any human involvement. None. Somebody programs, codes, I guess. Somebody codes a program that will fly that thing by itself. It will make a target and kill decision, well, not decision, it's programmed, on its own. When I learned about that, I completely freaked. I am not exaggerating. I grew up in the Cold War and the nuclear, I had the nuclear threat in my genes. But when I learned about countries who are willing to create weapons that on their own can target and kill human beings, I wondered, what is wrong with humanity? That is pretty messed up. Such weapons violate the laws of war. They cannot discriminate between a combatant and a civilian. How would you know if the combatants are hiding among civilians? How would that machine pick it out? They cannot be accountable. Let's say that machine does a war crime. Who's accountable? You certainly can't bring the Predator into the court. Is it the programmer? Is it the company that built it? Who's accountable? If there is no accountability, you are breaking international law. Since I only have 14 seconds, I'm going to move on quickly. These things will be on the air, in the land, in the air, on the land, and in the sea, and also have satellite connection. Think about that. But it is not all doom and gloom. In my kitchen in around 2008, when I discovered that these weapons are soon to be the Model T of autonomous weapon systems, we call them killer robots, I started nagging my husband that we should have to get friends together and create a campaign to stop killer robots. It took me, honestly, months of nagging him. His name is Steve Goose. He is the director of the ARMS, as in Weapon Division of Human Rights Watch. I met him and fell in love with him banning landmines. Yeah, he's brilliant and cute. I like him a lot. But it took a while because he's been banning cluster bombs. He's been banning, I don't know, he works on so many weapons it gives me a headache. But I said, we got to fit one more in. This is considered the third revolution in warfare. The first was gunpowder. The second was the atomic bomb. If these things are deployed, that's the third revolution in warfare. But we got friends, different NGOs that we have worked with on campaigns to ban, such as the campaign to ban landmines in 1997, the campaign against cluster bombs, 2008, the new treaty banning the nuclear weapons has a long way to go, but at least there's a framework in 2007. We agreed that we were not going to sit back and let a passless scientist and the so-called defense industry, which makes so much money off this stuff, I can't even begin to count it. We were not going to let them do this without raising a stink. And we have had a lot of success. See if I do this right. Oh. I come here from Berlin last week where 100 campaigners came together to strategize about our ongoing work. Then I was just in Geneva where diplomats are talking about doing nothing on killer robots. Working in the UN in negotiations about weapons, it is not fun. The only number I would take issue with now is the 4,500 artificial intelligence experts. There are now tens of thousands of scientists, roboticists, programmers, etc., in 26 some odd countries around the world who are saying no to using what they learned, the artificial intelligence, the coding, for the military, not allowing themselves to be tarnished the way people like Einstein tarnished themselves and gave nuclear physics a bad name that still hangs over nuclear physics. And it is pretty amazing. Not thousands. From some companies, people, mostly women, no offense to the gentlemen, have resigned because they will not participate in creating killer robots. That's pretty amazing. Do you want to live in a world with killer robots? Then talk to your government because it's considering getting them. I'm not joking. I'm going to say one more thing before they take away my toy and make me shut up. I want you to imagine fighter jets from the United States swarming. They're not just thinking one or two, swarms approaching fighter jets from Russia. Ponder it. We do not know their programming. They do not know ours. There is no way, unless you go to war, to test what will happen when they engage. Nobody has any idea, and yet these men are willing to move ahead to create these. It is insane, it is immoral, it is unethical. We need to take that money that goes to weapons of war and put it to the greater good of humanity so that we can live in sustainable peace with each other. We have to stop allowing politicians, religious leaders, political parties to teach us to hate the other. Who is the other? To you, I am the other. To me, you are part of humanity. I refuse to accept anyone as an other. I refuse to allow my country to continue doing this without intense protest. Please stop India before it starts. If you want more information, ta-da, that was in front of the Brandenburg Gate when we were in Berlin. It says, ban killer robots. That has also been done in front of the White House. Where did we first? Oh, it was done in front of the UN. And we let people borrow those outfits and, do an activity in support of banning killer robots. If you want information, that's who we are. Thank you. I got my shoes back on. Before I leave, they are going to show a kind of sensationalized, in my view, video about killer robots. We did not make it. But in essence, what it is portraying could be our future. The man at the end is an AI scientist for the last 35 years. He is one of the ones that has rounded up scientists to call for a ban. So listen to him, he's a good man. Thank you.
Customer pilots directed almost 3,000 precision strikes last year. We're super proud of it. It allows you to separate the bad guys from the good. It's a big deal. But we have something much bigger. Your kids probably have one of these, right? Not quite. Hell of a pilot? No. That skill is all AI. It's flying itself. Its processor can react 100 times faster than a human. The stochastic motion is an anti-sniper feature. Just like any mobile device these days, it has cameras and sensors, and just like your phones and social media apps, it does facial recognition. Inside here is 3 grams of shaped explosive. This is how it works. Did you see that? That little bang is enough to penetrate the skull and destroy the contents. They used to say guns don't kill people, people do. Well, people don't. They get emotional, disobey orders, aim high. Let's watch the weapons make the decisions. Now trust me, these were all bad guys. Now that is an airstrike of surgical precision. It's one of a range of products. Trained as a team, they can penetrate buildings, cars, trains, evade people, bullets, pretty much any countermeasure. They cannot be stopped. Now, I said this was big. Why? Because we are thinking big. Watch. A $25 million order now buys this. Enough to kill half a city. The bad half. Nuclear is obsolete. Take out your entire enemy, virtually risk-free. Just characterize him, release the swarm, and rest easy. These are available today. We have a distribution network taking orders from military, law enforcement, and specialist clients.
The nation is still recovering from yesterday's incident, which officials are describing as some kind of automated attack, which killed 11 U.S. senators at the Capitol building.
They flew in from everywhere but attacked just one side of the aisle. It was chaos. People were screaming.
You can see high windows, very small, precisely punctured to gain entry to the building.
What did you do for the victim?
I just did what I could for him.
Things weren't even interested in me. They're just buzzing.
Government sources admit the intelligence community has no idea who perpetrated the attack, nor whether it was a state, group, or even a single individual.
So if we can't defend ourselves, then we strike back.
We are investing very heavily in classified defense projects.
We make it our deterrent like our nuclear deterrent. We stockpile in the millions, the billions.
At key facilities, the White House, the New York Stock Exchange, Wall Street.
Safe in their homes.
Well, we wish we had boots on the ground in every community in this country, but we don't. So our instructions
Ollie?
and our suggestions are to stay in touch with
Ollie, oh, hi. Hi, Ollie, honey. How's Edinburgh today? How are all your studies going, huh?
Good. Great.
Oh, great. Hey, aren't we doing a video call today?
I'm kind of with people, so.
Oh, well, come on, Oliver, put her on.
Oh no, it's not like that. No, wait.
Oh, well, listen, I see some photos here with somebody, and I can see lots of likes, and what's that all about? Oh, wait a minute, here, it's on your
Mom, she's on the spy stuff in the military.
What is this video right here? Oh, no, I'm not going to click on that.
It's just this human rights thing about oppression or whatever.
Honey, you're not going into politics, are you? I mean, no protest.
Safe here, just like you said it would be.
Heavy traffic approaching the A720 this morning due to police.
Police are not saying this morning what prompted the alert.
Claim relaxing firearm legislation would be useless against the so-called slaughter bots.
Is to stay away from crowds. When indoors, keep windows covered with shutters.
Protect your family. Stay inside.
Can you hear me? Oliver, can you hear me? Listen to me.
I can hear it. It's close.
Authorities are still struggling to make sense of an attack on university campuses worldwide, which targeted some students and not others. The search for a motive is apparently turning to social media, and a video shared by the victims exposing corruption at the height.
But it's far from surprising. The weapons took away the expense, danger, and risk of waging war. And now we can't afford to challenge anyone, really. It's not even the smallest fringe group or a crank.
Who could have done this?
Anyone.
Dumb weapons drop where you point them. Smart weapons consume data. When you can find your enemy using data, even by a hashtag, you can target an evil ideology right where it starts.
This short film is more than just speculation. It shows the results of integrating and miniaturizing technologies that we already have. I'm Stuart Russell, a professor of computer science at Berkeley. I've worked in AI for more than 35 years. Its potential to benefit humanity is enormous, even in defense. But allowing machines to choose to kill humans will be devastating to our security and freedom. Thousands of my fellow researchers agree. We have an opportunity to prevent the future you just saw, but the window to act is closing fast.
Wow, that was as revelatory as it could be, at least for me. Jody Williams, everybody.
I can see you now.
Yes, they have there are a lot of smiling faces in the audience, which is very nice.
I wouldn't necessarily be smiling after that. But.
Yes, no, absolutely. That makes you think. And in the conversation we had yesterday, which was so amazing, I asked you what would be one of the most important and difficult question you would like to ask people, and you said, why don't you care? And I'm going to reverse that question and ask you, how can we make people care more?
Education is part of it. We grow up glorifying war. In my country, we learned history through the glorious battles that we have won. We don't talk about the genocide of the Native Americans upon which my country was born.
True.
The glorification of violence is, in my view, a huge problem. Some of the video games of violence are part of the problem. I have been in seminars where the men who build these things talk about, we're going to try to recruit some of those young men that play those games because they'll be really good drone pilots. Is that what we want? We need to teach people that you actually can sit down and talk and find resolution. It means I have to give up something, and so do you. But we don't go to war. War is ugly. It is dead bodies, severed limbs, dead babies, blown up buildings. People may act heroically in war, but war is not heroic. And we really need to learn that.
Wow. Is that it? Thank you so much. Wonderful. Jody Williams, everyone. Jody's talk and that video underlines very importantly what data can do. Our next speaker told me 2 things happen under pressure. Things are crushed and diamonds are formed. And I think listening to her story, I can truly say she is a diamond when it comes to the data world. Making policy and data intelligence available to people all over from common corridors and walks of life is the mission of her work. She is the CEO of Swaniti Ank Aha, a social enterprise that delivers development solutions to government officials in India. And her role focuses on developing long-term growth and partnership projects both in central and state bodies. Ritvika Bhattacharya is one of India's Forbes 30 under 30, a global leader at World Economic Forum, a special invitee to White House for her work, and most importantly, someone who takes data and policy very seriously. Put your hands together for Ritvika Bhattacharya.
Imagine you're running a company, except you can't monitor the quality of your product. You're not entirely sure if your resources are being spent efficiently. In fact, you don't even know whether your product is reaching your target beneficiary. Such a company would suffer, right? Most likely even fail. As fate would have it, we're all a part of such a company. In fact, it's the largest company in India. It's the government of India. The government is everywhere. Whether you and I avail government services every single day, whether it's the road that you took to come to this event, the glass of water that you had this morning, or the electricity that is lighting this room. Every single day, you and I avail government services. The government serves 1.3 billion citizens. It has an annual budget of 21 lakh crores. It has 160 central government schemes and hundreds of state government schemes. And when it comes to public services, we spend 12,000 crores on education. We spent 13,000 crores on employment. And we spent 15,000 crore on healthcare. Yet, we're left wanting. Many speculate that the issue with governance come from various sides, including corruption. But there's a more fundamental issue. The issue with weak governance is the lack of access to data. So imagine this. The government is like a bus driver. You and I are passengers on this bus. And the ride is bumpy. And why is the ride bumpy? Because the windshield is hazy. It's even black. Without information and effective data, we're all working in vacuum. And the government is taking decisions in this vacuum. And government decisions affect everyone, whether it's the rich or the poor. And we need to bring in data-driven governance in each rung of our government, whether it's local, whether it's state, whether it's national. When I was a graduate student at the Harvard Kennedy School, I had the opportunity to work with a few members of parliaments at a district level and understand what the issues of governance were. What I realized was basic information can have transformative impact on things like fund prioritization. So in 2012, I left the World Bank in Washington, D.C. and came back to India to start Swaniti. Swaniti is a social enterprise that works with MPs and state governments to deliver public services at the base of the pyramid. From understanding why an old age pension yojana is not reaching the target demography, to figuring out why migrant workers are not enrolling in social benefit programs. The goal of Swaniti is to support local and state governments in decision-making by leveraging data. And we have one more secret weapon in this process. We leverage youth. We embed young people who are driven and patriotic and want to give back across communities in India. We have them stay in constituencies and districts to understand what grassroots challenges are and give back in a more productive way. And as they're doing this, we have two core programs where we actually place young people. One is called Spark, where we have young people work with members of parliaments, and another called LEAD, where we place young people with district magistrates. And what we've seen in having young people work with data and the community to overcome basic gaps is that the impact is transformative. In fact, in the last 6 years, we've been able to touch over 4 lakh lives directly by strengthening welfare programs. We've been able to mobilize over 100 crore in funding that might have gone unspent had we not intervened. And we've actually created systems for change in the over 80 districts where we've worked. So the question is, there's all of this impact, but how is it happening? So let me give you a glimpse with 2 examples of how we're working on the ground. One of our first experiences was in rural Odisha. We had associates placed there to understand why public services weren't working. In one of the Gram Sabha meetings, we had an old man come up and essentially talk to them and say, look, I'm supposed to get pension, being an older person. I'm not getting it. But if I look at all of these young men in my district, they seem to be enrolled in this unemployment fund. It's a very interesting conundrum. So we reached out to the planning officer to understand what was going on. Why is it that some people were getting benefits and some were not? And what we realized was symptomatic of what we see across a lot of districts in India. The fact was that in a data vacuum, the planning officer was increasing the budget for programs by 10% every year. So every program just had a straight line item of 10% increase. That meant you had some programs which were overfunded and some programs which were underfunded. So the pension program had too little money, while the unemployment program had too much money. So we worked with the administration to course correct this. We built the capacity so that they can use data more effectively by putting in place dashboards, by putting in place monitoring systems so that they can better plan for future programs. But this is not just a problem that happens in rural Odisha. We worked in the Northeast region as well, and we noticed something similar. We held a meeting for women at a self-help group center. And we saw a lot of expecting mothers come up to us and say the same thing. They said, look, we are enrolled in a flagship government program for maternal benefits, but we seem to not be getting this. So what's happening here? The problem here was even more fascinating. So we went to the state governments to figure out what was going on. And what we realized was that the state government had budgeted for 30,000 women to be enrolled in this program, but in fact, there were 60,000 expecting women at that time. So essentially, they'd allocated half the amount of money that needed to be there. What we subsequently did was work with the administration to course correct that and to be able to plan that better. But why did that happen to begin with? Because they were working on old data. They estimated the number of women on the basis of what was considered to be data from about 7 years ago. So we went ahead and we realized that there was a need to build capacity within state governments so that they can plan better. Now, we worked in rural Odisha, we worked in the Northeast, and this was great because for the first time we got to see what data in the right hands can do. But we wanted to take it further. We wanted to make this a national movement. So we started to dream. We started to imagine how we can take this information to the hands of citizens, how you and I can become effective change makers. And finally, about 2 years ago, we decided we wanted to build a platform that would be a one-stop shop for multiple data indicators across sectors, across geography, so that you can understand what the health of the country looks like. You can see at a district level, at a state level, how public services are being delivered. Not just that, you can actually hold accountable your elected representatives on the performance of public services. And we came up with Jano India. Jano India has over 850 indicators compiled for multiple government sources. It goes ahead and it visualizes the performance of states and districts and compares it to each other. Today, I'm very excited to be presenting to you this 2 years of work, the Jano India platform.
Do you ever want to find out how far India has actually progressed? Are you tired and frustrated of all the fake news making rounds on Facebook and WhatsApp? What if we gave you all the facts about your constituency, your district, your country, right at your fingertips? Swaniti brings you Jano India, a database platform that enables you to be an informed citizen. Access 850 plus metrics from multiple government sources in one platform, presented to you in simple to understand maps and visualizations. Learn about your community and isolate where interventions are required. Compare the metrics of your area with other districts and constituencies and hold your government official accountable by rating their performance. Ask Google to talk to Jano India or log on to our website to understand the facts about healthcare, education, infrastructure and much more, available both in English and Hindi. Jano India. Know your facts. Know your nation.
Now we want to envision a country where data is near real time, where you and I can update a platform with how public services are being delivered. But data is one part of the story. The most powerful thing about any government is the collective voice of its citizens. It's when you and I are informed, we are engaged as problem solvers, not just those who identify the gaps, but work together to fix these problems. We have to ask ourselves, are we educated enough? Are we healthy enough? Are we moving forward together? Only when we ask these questions and work together can we take this nation forward. So I invite you today to work together so that we can take India forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shweta. Wonderful. Be careful. Wow. One idea constitutes the majority. One simple idea of making data accessible. You know, we had so much discussion about whether we should introduce the next speaker in all the glory or should it let be a mystery. She is someone who was trained in the classical soprano in Toronto. She has sung for Hindi cinema films. She has recently traveled from India, New Delhi to Bangkok and collaborated on the road trip with various artists. Talk about breaking barriers. Our performer tonight is singing something that is usually sung by men in the opera world. But you get to hear a woman perform it. I hope you enjoy that. She is phenomenal, charming, and most importantly, someone who has power to make you feel. Put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen, for Natalie DiLucio Ram. Wow. Thank you so much for that. Wow. That's the octave of power. I think she deserves a huge round of applause. It's the only time in the whole show I wish I was standing in the front, not in the wings. Amazing. You know, in Chinua Achebe, in Things Fall Apart, the novel, writes, I believe in the complexity of the human story, and that it should be told from many different perspectives. The Ibu people of the Ibu tribe, during the masquerade festival, say that if the masquerade is dancing in the public arena and you stand in one spot, you miss a lot of grace. So you need to move with the masquerade to be able to catch a lot of grace and movement. And that is how the stories of the world should be told, from many different perspectives, even if it requires for us to move and change our stance. All these phenomenal women represent breaking barriers in many ways, telling us different perspectives. And to be a man introducing 9 phenomenal women through this evening, it has to be one of the top honors of my life. Really, really. I think what I would encourage for all of you to do is to be able to see who are the women in your lives, in your arenas, in your communities breaking barriers, and applaud them, compliment them, encourage them, and run with them. I think it's now time to call all our phenomenal speakers for a huge round of applause on stage. Can I have all the speakers? Muskan, Ankita, Jodi, Ritvika, Natalie. Thank you so much for making it so special. And now, I would like to call upon 2 relieved men and also the brain behind all of this, Yashraj Akashi and Jyotirmoy Chatterjee, everybody. Thank you.
Wow.
Yash, I think it calls for you to say a few words after this phenomenal evening.
You know, we are back here with this event after TEDx Women happened on 29th of May 2015. And it took us a while to get together a team to be able to build this event. And it's amazing that the audience surprises us all over again. The big difference, it's not 1,000 women and 50 men. It's almost an equal crowd. And that is what matters.
Wow.
When we went back and we said, you know, having 1,000 women come down for an event like this is important, but it's really more important that the men participate in it. This is perfect. This is perfect. I'm sure Ted's going to be proud of this. Thank you all. You know, we live in a democracy, and while we go back and talk about our country in the recent elections that are going to come up, we also forget that the real voices are actually trapped at home. Women are a part of that democracy. And it needs platforms like this for them to open up, speak up, and share their stories. So we're not going to take 4 more years to do another one. We'll come back with soon. Soon. And I hope you guys support us. I hope all of you join us again. And thank you. Also, before I forget, how can we forget the guy who picked it up, pulled it together, and called everyone on stage so very well?
Thank
Deepak,
you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yash. Thank you, everyone.
The speakers, some of whom who've not slept the last 2 or 3 days, some of whom who just flew down and were jet-lagged and still made it an amazing talk, and so many more. Thank you. The audience, again, amazing, amazing. On a Friday event, raising the traffic, I mean, amazing. Thank you. And my team and everyone else, I want them on stage. It would have been impossible if they wouldn't have believed this would be possible. And they felt, you know, they said, don't worry. It's okay if it's a Friday. Don't worry. It's okay if there are few people who registered. Just believe in it that this is going to work. And it did work. It did work. We were really scared, saying, you know, how many people will come today? I don't know. But it worked. Look at this. It's amazing. It was a house full. So can I have my team? Oh, wow. I want to thank our sponsors, Aditya Birla Group, Mr. Birla. Thank you for believing us for like 7 years now.
Wow.
SC Johnson, which is all out. OMD, where are you guys? And all our partners, First Post, Better India, NCPA, Genesis BCW, and teachers, right? Yeah. And all other partners who are here to make this possible. Thank you. And I want my team on stage, please. Can I have my team on stage? They're everywhere, but guys, please, this is your moment.
Chaitanya,
and the women who made it possible. In fact, there was 60% women in the team that made it. I guess 70%. Conchita and team, I want you on stage, please. You guys deserve to be here. Please, can I have my team? Chaitanya?
Chaitanya, can we have you on stage? Thank you.
Yes.
I would like to call the team on stage. Yashraj is already here. We want Akansha, Shreen, JC, Conchita, Martin, Deven, Farida, Gaurav, Grishma, Kuntal, Ronaldo, Joanne, Stisha, Smith, Shaunak, Moolchand, Manish, Deep, Josha, Shekhar, Shravan, Riya, Jaskreet, Aman, Tanmay, Priyanka, Priyal, Sahil, and thank you to all our social media volunteers and the wonderful audience. It's been a pleasure to host you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I would like to thank, with this phenomenal team, all our sponsors and partners, the Aditya Birla Group and All Out, who have presented the TEDx Gateway Breaking Barriers Salon. With partnership with First Post, NCPA, Genesis BCW, the Better India, Beam Sanatory, Green Snack Co., Sleepy Owl Coffee, Eatalish, Style Cracker, Alkaline Premium, Enhanced Water, and all of you. Thank you so much.
And thank you for Wishcraft for making this possible.
Yes.
Amazing team.
And a big thank you.
Those guys work silently out there. Trust me, they make this all magical. Magical. Thank you, Wishcraft. Thank you,
Wishcraft, thank you so much. Yes. Have a great evening, everyone. Take a lot of pictures, keep tagging us, and share the wisdom. Thank you so much.